I am with the grad partnership. I work at American Institutes for Research, and it's like 8 a.m. my time, so the lights out is a real struggle for me. So I'm joined by Patricia and Tara. We're going to introduce ourselves as we go through this, but we're here to talk about the grad partnership. So we started off in Manzano talking about school, peer power, talking about regional aspects, and we do both school, region, and national and state. So we're kind of closing out this collaboration to give the kind of holistic aspect of how to connect it all together. I'm going to go really fast. So who are we? We are, you will see all of our 9 organization logos at the bottom. We've come together and we've got colleagues here presenting elsewhere today and tomorrow. We really wanted to take what was early warning systems and push it forward and call it student success systems because we need more. And you can see our mission up there. I have more about this later on. But we're really pleased that we have the organizations that we have as part of the partnership. We've got organizations that have been doing this work for decades. We have organizations that have very specific areas that they are focusing on in terms of advocacy, like our colleagues with the National Center for Learning Disabilities. We know that students with disabilities are one of our groups of students who are not graduating high school at rates that they should be. We also have rural schools collaborative as part of our work, as well as the SHOT Foundation in terms of really centering students and student perspectives. We wanted to learn from all of those organizations as we move this work forward into student success systems. So we've heard today and in the past, coming out of the pandemic, our systems aren't where we want them to be to really serve all students. At the same time, we're not trying to say everyone needs to do one more thing and throw out what you're already doing. We want people to expand on what they're doing if they're doing multi-tiered systems of support. PBIS, positive behavior interventions and supports. If they're doing 9th grade on track, early warning systems, whatever they're calling it, schools have some sort of tiered support, and so do districts. But what we want them to do is to push that out, because by themselves right now, we're not realizing the results that we want to be. And I don't think that that's new to anybody, but we wanted to really make sure that we're expanding on those systems. We also know that our systems that we have not really been centering equity and justice, and they're not reinforcing it, and so we're calling that out directly. So what are student success systems? There are 4 key components on the right. We talk about the importance of strong relationships within the school, students to students, students to adults, adults to adults, adults to community. Manzano talked a lot about that today. They've got a lot of great examples beyond what they talked about today around strong relationships. Real-time, actionable, holistic data. Historically, we always heard people talking about attendance, behavior, course performance. This morning we heard Bob talk about student agency, belonging, connectedness. That's really important. School climate data. So really thinking about all of this data as well as more than just kind of what we consider formative of those holistic grades, but what are those kind of talking with students and really centering that data as well, which you talked great examples about in terms of really talking to students and surveying students. What can we do to make this be more useful for you and really centering their voices. There has to be some group of adults that are having time to have conversations and make decisions. And that's what that 3rd point is. That has to happen. And then we really want all of this to be shaped by student-centered mindsets. As someone who's historically been doing early warning systems for, 20-something years, we were really focusing on those 2nd and 3rd bullet points, and we were being implicit about the 1st and the 4th. What we're really excited about this partnership is to be explicit about the 1st and the 4th, as well as the 2nd and 3rd. But we need all of that to really move things forward. So how do we do this? I really want to focus on the bottom. So while we know we have to focus on school connectedness, we know that student agency and belonging is really important. But what we really want to make sure is that for students who are Black, Indigenous, unhoused, English language learners, multi-language learners, students with disabilities, and those experiencing poverty, we really need to make sure that what we're doing is supporting them and really putting students in the center of it, rather than this happening to students, having students be involved in the conversations about goal setting, what interventions and supports they need, if it's beyond the building walls, all of that. That's really what we're talking about. So I'm passing it off. I made up time. There you go. Patricia, go.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I'm Patricia Bolana. I lead the grant partnership along with colleagues from the 9 organisations that you see in front of you here. I will also go really fast in the interest of time, but I would say I would love to find you in the hallways over the next day and a half, just to share a little bit more about our work and how you can find us. So Jenny has touched on this already. We are a collaboration of 9 organisations. Bob started off this morning talking about bridge building. I would have to say there's a lot of bridge building and bringing 9 organisations together. It is slow, intentional, but very rewarding work. I'm sure all of these organisations are already familiar to all of you. I would just do a call out to my colleague from the National Centre for Learning Disabilities. She's sharing at a session later this afternoon. She's done some really good work around student voice and the stakeholders involved in sort of supporting students with disabilities, and she's going to be sharing that work in a little bit. Trick is this way.
The bottom. Bottom one. Yeah. Down. Yeah.
This is just to show the breadth of our effort. We are thrilled that we have about a dozen or so communicating partners really just supporting us, excuse me, lifting up this whole idea of student success systems. So we're thrilled to have organisations like NASB and MEA, National Rural Education Association, really the wind at our back, helping spread and disseminate student success systems. This is just a quick visual to show how we're organised. It is not easy to organise advancing student success systems across 9 organisations, but this is just a quick visual. We do our work really in cross-organisational drivers. We have right now a leadership team that takes some strategic decisions, but we're really trying to drive decision-making down to these subgroups over time. We have an advisory council. I see some colleagues from the advisory council at the conference today, and then I've already referenced our communicating partners. But I would really just like to draw your attention to the Circle Grant Partnership Collective. We really are a collective of 9 organisations. We've been together for about 16 months or so. We've made some really good progress, but it is slow work. I also just want to take a moment to say Manzano High School is our first grant partnership spotlight school. So it was so thrilling to hear them talk today about all the good work that they've done. So I just wanted to take a moment to make that connection. So Sarah challenged us in the session before just to think about what is partnership and what is collaboration. And we've sort of pressed pause a little bit a few months back just to think about what are we learning across the 9 organisations about collaboration and partnership. I do not intend to go through all of these, but I'll just really highlight a couple. I've already mentioned it's intentional engagement, and we really have to be intentional with each other around the work. We've tried to build a culture of figuring it out together, working on pieces together, and I think that has gone some ways to engender trust across the team. A survey of educators, we did talk to about 300 educators as we were thinking about defining and defining student success systems. At this conference last year, we also got attendees' feedback on student success systems as well. And just having that and having our North Star and having 9 organisations working to that North Star, I think in itself has really just been such a collaborative effort. And of course, having our Spotlight School, we have just named our second Spotlight School, which is the Southeast Lauderdale. It's a rural school in Mississippi. So having Spotlight Schools doing the work and being able to partner with them and showcase that work has just been really helpful for us as well. So that is a super quick run through because I really did want to get to this state, district and school piece, which is right here.
Thanks. So I'm Tara, and I serve as the Chief Program Officer for Talent Development Secondary and also a member of the Grad Partnership Leadership Team. And Patricia won't say this, but I will. I think for us, when we first came up with this idea was presented, we were like, wait, what? We compete with AIR, we compete with VAR, we are competitive in many ways. we all offer something different and unique, but like, you're gonna bring us all together? It's all crazy? Like, how's it gonna work? And Patricia's been masterful at taking these competing organizations, and we have all, I think as a leadership team, said, well, we are actually a little different and nuanced in our approaches, which gives those that we hope to serve choice and meet them where they are. So I think it's worked well, but I just would fail to mention that, like, wait, you guys are all competitors. But then here we are in the same sandbox building together, which has been, for me, very refreshing professionally. So some of the collaborations at the state and district levels that I'm going to speak to, we have leveraged greatly our advisory group and those communicating partners. Having people know who you are, what you're doing, and this North Star of like, we want student success systems everywhere, or whatever that takes. We know that these 9 organizations aren't enough by themselves to get this in every school in this country. So we need those communicating and advisory partners and leveraging those in a number of ways. I would say that the tool, the definition for student success system is something we're encouraging all to embrace, and some of our communicating partners are, to try to clear up that EWS, MTSS, RTI, PBIS, it's all kind of the same thing, but student success system gives us a fresh definition that we all agreed upon through a lot of research. The other tool is the team reflection tool. So every school, as Jenny mentioned, has some iteration of a tiered support system. And if you want to take that as your school or your district and say, how do we make ours stronger? The self-reflection tool is a great free resource in order to do that and guide you through that process. I would say the other strategy for us to sort of spread this idea and this work is through intermediaries and supporting and strengthening intermediary organizations. So anybody that's providing direct supports to schools with this work. So how can we share what we know from any of these 9 organizations on how to do this work so that they can be stronger and we have, it spreads quicker and in a better way, faster, I would say. And I would say at the school level is where, for each of the models and any of the partners within Grad Partnership, is where customization happens. Because we all have this national, like, this is the way you do it. But then you walk into Manzano and how we do it there and how we do it in New Orleans is not the same. We're still trying to build a similar system that meets those 4 criteria, the definitions, but they look wildly different because they're serving wildly different populations and in different places and contexts. I think one of the keys to success for us is having this student success team within a school building. I could tell you all day long what works in other places, but unless I have a school team to say, this is how they did it this way, A, B, C, or D, what's gonna work best for you? You guys decide, and maybe you come up with E, that's great. We need that school team, and I would say some of the key roles on that school team are someone who is charged with building the system, whether we call it a student success system, EWS, or MTS, like Rachel has someone that has that. Absent that, it's really hard to keep this moving. It's just, it fits and starts and stops because everyone has all their other jobs to pull them into it, right? I think having the guidance counselors, the scheduling, and those that really understand that work is a key factor on those teams, as well as your school leadership and department heads, like the instructional council is heavily involved, or whatever you call that, wherever you are in this work as well. Accounting for staffing transitions, I would just say that's one that, like, yeah, everybody, right, we get that. So that one's tough. So when we know someone's going, and so some of the ways we're doing that is trying to build capacity. Like, we don't work with 1 person in a building, we try to work with 3 to 5.
Yeah.
So if somebody moves on, and actually some of those, I call them seeds, like 3 that we started with Manzano, 1 moved on, is now to middle school, so we planted a seed there. Unintentionally, unknowingly, he didn't know he was going to be moved, we didn't know he was going to move, but we planted a seed, right, so that spreads in that way. 2 of the key things that make this work relevant, one is that what we're doing is aligned with the state and district policies. So in New Mexico, for example, there are 2 state laws that are key legislative pieces, the Attendance Success Act and Yazzie Martinez lawsuit. So there are 2 things that drive everything they do in that building. Like, you cannot work in New Mexico without thinking of those 2 things front and center. So everything we do is now aligned and framed in that way for them, not the way I would do it anywhere else, but in New Mexico, that's how we present it. And then aligning to the school leader's vision. So that Rachel had this vision that she articulated. Like, I heard about this, I wanted to do it when I had the chance, now I got the chance, and you guys align with our vision. I've been in other buildings where the principal's focused on something else, like good stuff, great stuff, but not this. And so sometimes then it gets pushed to the side, so that work doesn't, so we don't move as quickly and as fast as we could. I mentioned it here. We really wanted to highlight this. It's one of the things that we've used and helped to facilitate with some of the schools that we work with in the GRAD partnership. It was quite an iterative process to pull it together with lots of collaboration. And the tool is dense. I would say if you're going to go here and check it out, there's 4 parts, and we suggest you just pick one area of focus. They're aligned to the pieces of the definition. And then that has led schools like Manzano and others to say, okay, we're going to strengthen our PBIS after going through that process. We're going to strengthen our articulation with our 9th grade or whatever that might be. And that's it. Yeah. I don't like my picture. I think that's all we had to cover. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we're good. We did it.
Okay.
Do you have any questions? Or we got
That piece about customizing at the school level, I think that's really obviously powerful because nobody likes anybody coming to their school and tell them what to do. Can you just speak a little bit more about what, maybe give an example? So I know the high school is here. Maybe give an example of what that looks like to customize at the school level.
And I can tell you how our organization gets to that customization. And I think each of the grad partners has a different way of doing it. Ours is we conduct a listen and learn tour where we try to be on campus, on site at the school to understand how the students experience the school and to understand how the adults in the building experience the school. And from that, we always can say, wow, they are knocking it out of the park with students feeling connected here. That we saw, we heard it, every person we talked to said it. Here's where we think we can support a system to strengthen something that isn't going so well. So I think that listen and learn tour for us is critical to customize because we sort of have all of these ways and all these directions and ways we can help you, but that's not helpful if you already are doing things and we pick the wrong thing. So we usually do the listen and learn tour and then sit with the leadership team to say, here's what we heard, here's what we think we know about your school, here's where we think we can be helpful, and does that make sense to you? And then we engage in a conversation to develop a scope of work and customize. And that can end up focusing on one part, 2 parts of it, the whole thing. It really depends on that. With this backdrop of whatever their state district laws and things, things that they have to address first are already in place.
Thank you.
And I think the one customization, successful variation, I will call it Manzano. So we present that the team of teachers that works with a group of students meet weekly and they look at data. And they say, oh, Tara's not been here for 2 days, what's going on with Tara, right? Well, Manzano said, well, we're gonna do that quickly, kind of and virtually with our teachers through some spreadsheets and email and use technology to our advantage. When we have that meeting, we're gonna have the student there. And ideally the parent there as well. And we're gonna say to the student and the parent, here's your data. Here's what we've been doing. Here's where we'd like to see you get there. What's preventing you from getting there? How do we help you? So really engage them. And you heard Zeth at the beginning this morning say, it wasn't a bunch of adults coming in here telling me how I was screwing up. It was adults saying, we need you to do better. You want to do better. We can help you do better. What do we need to do? And that was a successful variation that we don't do that everywhere because not everyone has, it takes a lot of time to have those one-on-one conversations with students. And if you look at their data, they can't do it with every child that's flagging in the way they would like to. So they triage and they pick who's going to benefit most from that conversation. So that was a successful variation from that customization.
And to that end, as a teacher, so much of that work can be done digitally. For every so often, I get these request forms to fill out. So when a student is identified, why were they identified? Was it attendance? Was it failing grades? Was it where they reported to because it seemed like they were just struggling in general? Whatever the reason may be, we get a feedback form, we have like a week to fill it out digitally, and that's utilized at those meetings that are mostly student-led, and preferably with parent input.
We have a question.
Oh yeah, it's kind of 2 pieces. One is just like a quick yes, no, and then the other one is broader. So as you're working with different schools, if I understand it correctly, to build the capacity at the school level to establish student success systems, and over time monitor data, help students move in the right direction. I'm wondering, like Ed, do you have someone from the grad partnership at these meetings? And like, what's your overall strategy for over time building capacity such that they're able to do all these weekly meetings? And, the dream, I imagine, is in the future that they would need these outside supporters.
I think for the second half, I would say is that we're digging deeply this year into intermediaries. So people that are local to an area or a region, right? Like someone that lives in Albuquerque could ideally become expert in this, and they can then help any school within APS, right? Like they could help them without this national person coming in and sharing these ideas. So we have, one is we have a certification process that is currently in one state, and we have a vision as Grad Partnership to move that to a better, more sophisticated level of certification. So someone has gone through and had support for a year on how do you build or strengthen a student success system. And they get certified through Johns Hopkins University saying, I know how to do this. Even if they didn't fully get it all up and running, they know how to do it. Right? We might not be able to get it all done. So we know that we now have some sort of seal of quality in some places. And that helps to then build the capacity. And we usually ask for at least 3 in the school to be engaged in certification, 3 to 5 in that. And then also then in Albuquerque, in that instance, I would say within the district, we're building layers of support and sharing and communicating out, like Manzano is doing these things, other schools can do these things, and then how do we have forums and places where schools can learn from each other. So building a professional, or restarting a professional learning community on early warning systems within APS is on the docket for next year. Right? That's something that was in place, kind of faded with the pandemic, and now there's a need. So again, the wisdom is in the room. The wisdom is in that district. They just, we'll provide a little bit more information to them, but they can take this and continue to build. And that's our kind of theory of action. I don't know, Jen, you're
Just to add a little bit to the first part of Tom's answer around intermediaries, they can be nonprofits, they can be community organizations, just organizations that are in the local geography and know the context and can connect with a network of local schools. So that's sort of our longer term strategy for building that capacity. One of our longer term strategies.
And states. We're kind
And
of,
states.
there's several states that are very interested in this and are already doing some kind of form, fashion, have been for years. So trying to help them think through how do we make this a statewide strategy and give the people the right support that they need to be able to do it well.
Yeah. Linda, I think in terms of time, we're close to out, or we have time for
We,
one more question?
we have 5 minutes.
Oh,
So maybe we could open to any questions. Does that
Yeah,
make
from any
sense?
of the groups.
Any question, any group?
Any group, yeah.
Yeah, I had a question, perhaps I misunderstood, but when we're talking, you said, and this is for Marzano?
Manzano.
You talked about assessing students exiting 8th grade and then revisiting this idea of intervention courses, which is against what we've been trained for many, many years in
Yeah.
terms of introducing remedial coursework, right? And I know many of our high school principals are currently facing this skills gap that's wider than ever because of COVID. So can you tell me a little more about that? Because we keep pushing back and we're saying we're doing MTSS, so that's how we're supposed to intervene in the classroom. So tell me a little more about that.
We've also heard that research and know that intervention classes, as they have been done, has not been leading to success. So when we say interventions, it's not like this double booked class or anything like that. It's what my teachers are going to be prioritizing is small group learning. So we don't want to give additional tests. We want to use the data that our middle schools are already using. So like iReady or maybe the final, whatever it may be. And then using that data to, well, would you benefit more from a small group setting, our intervention classes? And our intervention teacher is our best teacher. Mr. Hall, a good friend of mine, 7 years I've known now.
Is it still algebra though? It's
It
still
is- it is
titled
just a
algebra,
regular
it's just
algebra
a lower
credit.
class size so that the teacher could provide more personalized differentiation.
Exactly.
Got it, okay.
Exactly.
And I think the mindset for me is, because I hear exactly what you're saying, but we are in a time where education has just evolved exponentially. And so I'm looking at it from a standpoint of equity-based education. And not everybody is created equal, not everybody needs the exact same thing. We are trying to intervene based on the data we have to set students up for the most success that they can garner from where they are at a point in time. And so I guess that's what I would say the workaround or how we're getting around that.
I'll say related to that point, I hope like the next iteration of your vertical alignment is looking back at MTSS in the middle school and identifying those particular standards that your students are struggling with the most and intervene with them there instead of
Yes.
waiting.
Yes.
And it raises a question for me for our friends with peer connection, is that I would assume, so I'm checking my assumption, that your peers are in contact with teachers around standards. So they don't just come in and say, oh, I'm gonna mentor and tutor you. There's some kind of communication mechanism where the teacher's saying like this standard they're all struggling with. So if you could do some things.
Absolutely, yeah. So with our, specifically in our high schools, since we're there all day, that is a part of the process. So what we do is before the school starts, so they do summer training, and then that first week before school starts, which is normally in service, we allow our tutors to go with their teachers, and they're literally spending time planning and prepping and building a relationship to know where to go for the classroom. And so many of our teachers do include them in their lesson planning. And so we do train them on like, these are the standards. We also take data, so we go through the data with them. We train them on this is what we're looking for. And we let them work with the teacher on how they want that implemented in the classroom. So they just don't show up when they say, oh, I'm gonna help. Like, no, it's like a whole process to this. And so we do train them in a way that they are able to go in and know, okay, this is where the students are struggling, this is how we can do this, you know, we can bring in activities, and we even kind of create our own like education-based activities. So even though I'm doing this activity, there's a standard behind this, there's a concept that we're doing, you're having fun, and so you don't realize that you're hitting these points. But that's how we even do our planning in the way that we do
I
activities.
think they would have more flexibility to kind of go back to your point. Because we know, like one of the schools I'm at, half of the ninth graders, you ask them, did you have a math teacher in seventh grade from start to finish? Did you have a math teacher, the same person, in eighth grade, start to finish? And over half of these kids have not had.
Correct.
So we know they don't know seventh and eighth grade math standards, but we're not allowed to teach them directly. We're in an intervention class, so this peer model and what they're doing, I feel like, because it has to be addressed. They don't know it.
Can we please just extend our appreciation for all three groups?